How to record your hardware synth on 3 different levels. By request from multiple of you, let's lay out how to set up and record your hardware synthesizers. What is better, USB or MIDI? And why doesn't your synth play in sync with your computer? Hey, my name is Lo. I'm a film composer with more than 20 years of experience. And as you see, I love playing around with external synths and effects. Let's start real simple and then slowly build it out. First setup. You bought your first synth, but this cable clearly doesn't connect to your computer. So you need an audio interface. Let's make it part of the setup. We connect our interface via USB to the computer. And of course, the speakers or headphones are also connected to the interface. And here we have our synthesizer. We can take the line output of our synthesizer and go straight to our input of our interface. Now we open up our DAW and open an audio track. We select the input of your audio track to the input of your interface. To me, that is the front one for the Arturia audio fuse. And the output to left and right to the monitors. And now if we do input monitoring, we should have sound on our synth. And that is correct. And we can now press record and record the synth line that we want to play. And we can play it back and it's all still there. But of course we want to make use of the advantages of MIDI and not just record your synths straight into the computer. Although it's totally okay, let me give you 4 reasons why to use MIDI. First of all, this is a personal one. I have the dexterity of a sloth on high water, so I definitely need some help afterwards quantizing everything I just played. This is the amazing thing about MIDI. We can now record everything we have in mind and then clean it all up afterwards. Second, now that we have the note information that we just played, we can use this note information on other synths or dive back in and re-record this synth at a later date. But what makes it so important for me is that I have 2 hands free. I normally grab my MIDI and re-record the synth line over the whole song, beginning to end, while heavily tweaking the knobs of the synth. This way you can really shape the sound of a song instead of it just being a loop that constantly repeats. And the 4th reason, some synths simply don't have a keyboard, so you need MIDI for this thing to play. Okay. How do we get this MIDI info into our synth? For this we can use our old school MIDI cables or we can send MIDI over USB. If you only have one synth, USB is probably the easiest way to set it up. So how do we set up our synth with MIDI using USB? It's rather simple. We have the same setup as before and we connect our synthesizer with USB to our computer. Now you have to open up your DAW and go to your settings and tell your computer to send and receive MIDI from this synthesizer. This is a little different in every DAW, but just poke around, it should be somewhere under settings and MIDI. For this, next to our audio track, we're also going to open a MIDI track. We're going to make sure that the input of the audio track is set to all, which means that all MIDI that comes into the computer will be sent out from this track as well. And then the output you're going to send to the synth that you want. We had the Arturia Microfreak, so Arturia Microfreak. And now if I turn my input monitoring on of my audio track and I select my MIDI track, I can play on my MIDI keyboard. So now I can record a MIDI track over here. And if I play the MIDI track back, I can hear it through my synth and now I can change the filtering. Or I can open up the MIDI clip and move some notes around, do whatever I want to do. And now re-record that into audio. If the line you just recorded does not perfectly line up, that's okay. It happens in some circumstances. This is because there is a latency introduced by sending the MIDI to the synth and then the synth sending audio back to the computer. Some DAWs automatically take care of this and some don't. Every DAW has their own way of dealing with this, like track latency or whatever, but I just found out the easiest way to just zoom in afterwards and line up the file by hand. What do you do if you have a setup with multiple synths? This is the time to think about how you want the setup to flow. I want to talk about the pros and cons for using USB or MIDI cable. But before I can do this, I'll have to give you an explanation of how MIDI actually works. If you know this already, just click on to the next chapter. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It is a protocol for musical instruments to talk to each other. The MIDI protocol was for the first time introduced in 1983. It instantly was taken as the standard, and we still use the protocol today. Although MIDI 2.0 was introduced in 2020, a good 40 years later, it is still safe to say that almost everything right now runs on MIDI 1 protocol. So what does the protocol include? MIDI cables send over note data, controller changes, and clock information. They do this over 16 different channels. The idea is that every instrument is set to their own channel. You can send note data. This is simply what note is played and how loud is it played. You can send MIDI CC data. This tells your computer the changes you made on the knobs of the instrument. You can send program changes. This will send the preset of your synth. And then there's clock data. This is very important if your synth has an arpeggiator or you're using a drum machine, so that all your instruments are playing in sync with each other. There is a lot more like sysx and whatever, but this is a good general description of what MIDI does and how it works. Okay, where were we? Pros and cons of using MIDI or USB cables. Let's start with USB. The pros. It looks really clean in your DAW. You don't have to select a MIDI channel. Your computer knows what synths are connected to it. So you just select the synths that you want and send the MIDI to it. Some synths you can power over USB, so no need for an external adapter. And maybe the most important one, USB cables are always around and you can even buy them at your local corner store if needed. The cons. If you run multiple synths, you're gonna need a lot of cables going from your computer to your synths. Every instrument will need its own cable and you'll definitely need a powered USB hub. MIDI over USB often introduces digital noise to your signal. I have absolutely no idea why, but if you hear that high static sounding noise, it's most likely your USB. If you want to get rid of that noise, I've tried it all, so I'm gonna save you a lot of money here. I bought the USB cables with those big round blocks on it. Doesn't help. I bought small adapters that supposed to lift the ground. Nope, not helping either. I've bought very expensive big power converters with extra coils to give you clean power. Even that does not help. So please don't go down that route. Spend your money on better things. I've already made these mistakes for you, so you don't have to. But when you use the USB for power and you send MIDI over a MIDI cable to the same synth, the problem is gone. MIDI cables. Pros. You only need one cable in and out of your computer and you can daisy chain all your instruments together. MIDI cables can run for an extremely long distance. Most synths from the mid-80s on would have MIDI, and USB didn't come on the block for decades. Cons. Because there are 16 channels on one cable, you need to make sure you send and receive over the right channel. Not every audio interface also has MIDI, so sometimes you have to buy a separate MIDI interface. No worries, they're around 50 bucks on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description for you. So how do we set up multiple synths? Well, first I'm gonna switch my synthesizer over for a MIDI keyboard, so I can control all synths from one place. Okay, let's lay out all our synths, and we're gonna send MIDI from the computer. We're gonna take the MIDI out from the interface and send it to our first synth. Most synths have a MIDI in and a MIDI through. What we're gonna do is we take the next cable, connect it to the MIDI through on this synthesizer and the MIDI in on the next one. And this way we can daisy chain all the synths together with only one MIDI cable coming out from the interface. Now all of the synths can receive MIDI from the computer. If you have an audio interface that has enough inputs for all your synths, you can connect your synths straight into your interface, but it is more common to use a mixer at this stage. So we can add a mixer and simply take the audio from all of your synths and move that into your mixer, and then have your mixer go out and into your interface. So now we can send note information to all of these synthesizers. They are bringing sound out into the mixer that's going into the interface and can be re-recorded into the computer. But how do these synths know what note information is for them? For this reason, you have to give every synth its own MIDI channel. Now, if I send out to MIDI channel 2, it will go to the nymphs, and if I send out to MIDI channel 4, that will go to the microbrute. How do you set your synths to the right MIDI channel? Well, it'll be different per synthesizer, so crack open your manuals and I'm pretty sure you'll find that out. Now, if you have 4 synths, I can add 3 more MIDI channels. I will give every MIDI channel the name of the synthesizer that you're working with, and I would send it out to the designated synth. There will be, if you use USB, you send it to the correct synth, or if you use a MIDI cable, you're gonna go to the DIN output and you just select the right channel. So now I can select what synth I want to play by simply selecting the MIDI channel, push it in a record, and I can play this specific synth. And voila, it's all set up. We got multiple instruments running with our computer. I hope this was informative. If you want to know more, what is the minimum you need for a music setup, click over here. And if you want to connect more or be part of our monthly songwriting challenges, or you just want to support this channel, please become a member. And I'll catch you next time.